We're all told that high intelligence is basically a golden ticket, a guarantee for a happier, more successful life. But what if that's not really the whole story? I mean, is that really the full picture? Because psychological research paints a much, much more complex reality, one where a brilliant mind can be both an incredible gift and a really heavy burden. And if you've ever felt that way, trust me, you are not alone. So here's the deal. The myth says you're on a smoother path. But the reality is, high intelligence doesn't get rid of life's struggles. It just changes their shape. The challenges don't vanish. They just become more internal, more nuanced. So let's start there. Let's dive into the internal world of a highly intelligent person, because that's often where the biggest battles are fought. This brings us to a really interesting idea called cognitive depth. And no, this isn't just a fancy way of saying overthinking. It's more like the brain's default setting is analyze. It's constantly processing, replaying conversations, questioning decisions, even when it absolutely doesn't need to. And this constant mental engine has some serious real-world consequences. A mind that never slows down, that leads to chronic exhaustion. And that ability to see a perfect outcome in your head, it can create a paralyzing fear of failure. And maybe worst of all, it creates this relentless inner judge that is just impossible to please. And that really gets to the heart of it. The pressure isn't coming from the outside. It's coming from within. You're not trying to keep up with other people. You're trying to keep up with the ideal version of yourself you know is possible. And without a good dose of self-compassion, your own intelligence can turn into your harshest critic. So all that internal pressure, well, it doesn't stay contained. It spills over into our social lives, and that's where this sense of disconnect from the world can really creep in. You know that feeling of being totally alone in a crowded room? It's not about being antisocial. It's about searching for something we could call mental resonance. It's this deep, fundamental need for connection that goes way beyond small talk. When your humor, your values, your whole way of talking is wired differently, those superficial chats can feel incredibly draining, and you end up feeling isolated even when you're surrounded by people. This leads to a communication problem that is just exhausting. It usually goes something like this. A really complex, multi-layered idea pops into your head, but to actually share it, you have to dumb it down. You have to strip away all the nuance. And the result? You end up feeling completely misunderstood, which, over time, just makes you want to stop sharing your thoughts at all. You see this same disconnect in how you interact with rules. To everyone else, questioning authority looks like you're just trying to be a rebel. But for you, it's about analytical reasoning. You don't follow rules just because. Your brain is hardwired to understand the logic, the why behind them. You're not trying to be difficult, you're being analytical. Okay, so after hearing all of that, it can sound pretty bleak. So how are we supposed to think about all this? Well, this is where we have to reframe the entire conversation. Because these challenges, they aren't bugs in your system. They're features of a very different kind of operating system. Let me give you an analogy that I think makes this crystal clear. Just imagine for a second that your mind is like a camera with an extremely high resolution. So, because your camera has this incredible resolution, you see more detail, more nuance, more truth than the average person. But there are trade-offs, right? Your files, your thoughts, they're huge, so they take way longer to process, which leads to that mental exhaustion we were talking about. And it makes it so much harder to upload your view of the world for other people, because they're all using a different, lower res system. And that brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway from this whole explainer. The struggle you feel isn't some kind of personal failing. It's not that your camera is broken. The real problem is that so much of the world, its social rules, its career paths, its ways of communicating, it just isn't built to handle your resolution. Realizing this isn't an excuse, it's an explanation. And it leads us to the most critical question of all. If the world isn't built for your resolution, then how do you navigate it? How do you learn to not just survive, but to actually thrive on your own terms? That's the real challenge and the real adventure.